Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and distinguished guests. It's with great pleasure that I stand before you today as the chairman of the Advertising Communication Association of South Africa at this prestigious venue, the GIBS Business School, for the inaugural Effie's Dialogue session. Before I start, I just want to introduce our moderator for this evening. It is Kagiso Musi. I'm loving the vibe from this crowd. I should have started with my opening line to my comedy act. Kagiso is the MD of Meta Media, and for her sins, also the inaugural chairman. Notice I used the non-gendered version of chairman. Also the inaugural chairperson of the Effie's committee and currently a committee member. But I'm going to introduce the topic and have a few words to say before we hand over to our esteemed colleagues. Tonight we dive into a topic that is not just timely, but is pivotal. The advent of AI and AI generative technologies in our industry has become the buzzword of our time. Our panel is graced by mavens and doyens and chief troublemakers of the marketing world.
You decide who's who.
These are individuals who have both shaped and shaken the foundations of how we understand and interact with creative services. Ian Altman once said, and Ian is the CEO of ChatGPT, for those who don't know, the future of AI in marketing is not just about data analysis, it's about narrative creation. And this holds a profound truth for us in the South African marketing and communications ecosystem. We are at a crossroads where the traditional landscapes of digital and traditional communications agencies are predicted to dissolve into the annals of history. As the recent Forrester report suggests, an AI era necessitates a monumental shift from services to solutions if agencies wish to survive. But as we stand on the precipice, we see not just challenges but colossal opportunities. Agencies are starting to bet on big brand-specific AI models to scale marketing's impact. This isn't just a transition, it's a transformation. It's about enhancing creativity with computational power, marrying the art of the possible with the science of the probable. Interestingly, the Forrester report also highlights that while low-cost AI content solutions will potentially grow agency revenues, they might simultaneously shrink in-house remits. This paradox is a testament to the complex dance between innovation and adaptation. Furthermore, a projected 10% increase in agency reviews due to fear of AI mismanagement underscores, and this fear comes, by the way, from the marketing communities, CMOs requesting agency reviews. The fear of mismanagement underscores the urgent need for not only embracing AI, but mastering it as an industry. As agencies increasingly incorporate AI into their business models, they're evolving from delivering traditional creative and media services to implementing robust marketing and technology solutions. This is not just a shift, it's a strategic metamorphosis. It demands agility, foresight, and unyielding commitment to excellence. So to all the aspiring entrepreneurs and business leaders here tonight, hopefully you're at least one of those, let this dialogue serve as a catalyst. Engage with the insights shared, question the status quo, and dare to reimagine the future. As we discuss, debate, and delve deeper into the realms of AI in our industry, let's craft a narrative that is not only about survival, but about thriving in an era of unprecedented digital transformation. So in closing, remember that in this age of rapid technological advancement, staying curious, adaptable, and informed is your safest bet to not just navigate, but lead in these challenging times. I invite you to join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists to what I am confident will be an insightful and transformative discussion. Let the dialogue begin. And please note, this was written by an AI tool.
ChatGPT.
That's why it was so long, Tabang. I literally gave you, you see now I have the AI ear. There's like 14 earrings here, and like this thing in my hair. It's, and I think I've touched it. You can hear me. So maybe to just get a couple of housekeeping things out the way. To my panelists, please don't be alarmed. There's a lot of people that are going to be still coming in. And we'll just, kind of continue, as they go. I do want to thank, and I thought my boss was going to do that, but I do want to thank the Effie Committee, our chairman, Mr. Anwar, sitting right there, Sneh, for doing all the work to get this going, and the rest of the Effie Committee, Franco right there, the guys that are up front. I can't see any of the others, but yeah, guys, I just wanted to say thank you, and of course to GIBS, our partner. Oh. There he is. So he sits on the Effie Committee. He is one of the executives here at GIBS. And as I said, I can't see anybody else with, what about me? Silas right there also sits on the Effie Committee and is an important partner to the program and to all the discussions that we have. I think we'll be doing it now for 3 years, Silas, yeah? So a nice long-term partnership that we actually have here. This year is year 3 of the dialogues. I see some familiar faces in the audience who have participated in our dialogues before. They're always very riveting, very informative. It's as Sabang said, this one is the first one for this year. We've got 3 more, Anwar. We've got 3 more that we are going to be having, obviously discussing all sorts of things that are important to the industry. It is not by, I suppose maybe it is by choice that we are flanking the gentleman here, right? So you're supposed to be pressing stuff.
There's just some things you can't fake. Grit. Not as a trade, but as a persistent call. Ready to charge. Passion, attitude, determination. Not swayed by the whispers of doubt or despair. Not seeking the easy road. Not fearing the fight. Carving out the creative through the night. Making sure everything lends results wide. Craft. It's in the creativity, attention to detail, deliberate, thought through, designed to a T, well executed, right messaging, striking visuals, targeted audience, understanding the rhythm, shaping the narrative, because effectiveness is imperative. Heart. The human truth, insight, pushing boundaries, back to the drawing board, again and again and again, until it feels right. Does it evoke emotions? Is it connecting deeper? Is it effective? The authenticity, sincerity, you have to feel it in the story. Results. The measurable impact of the work tied to the goals, the influence, growth in business, after effects, the likes, shares, clicks, KPIs, insights, and quality over pretty pictures. From lead gen to customer satisfaction, it's all about setting the global benchmark for excellence. Truth is effective marketing, always makes impact. So why fake it when you can show real results? Enter the Effies.
I want to dock that those of you who have been judges over the years in the Effies, your names go up in the global Effies list for you to be called upon to judge all over the world. This is an important part of a global program where marketers, where our industry can participate in international shows, but really showcasing work that works. And that video was generated by AI as well. So I asked to be put here, taller than all of you, because when I read all the CVs of my esteemed panel, I actually felt I fall a little bit short, hence I'm sitting a little bit higher than all of you. But maybe to get into it, technology is disrupting our lives and changing business in a very, very significant way. Do you guys know who your customer and your prospects really, really are? Do you know how it is that you can actually reach them, in today's world? in this very data-first environment. I work on the media side where everything is about data, and I am every day enthralled at what it is that technology allows us to be able to do in order to be able to reach our customers. Tabang's already introduced me. I would like to, next slide.
She's ahead of you.
This is me, moderator par excellence. Thank you. We have a panel, and thank you very much. We have a panel here that I think is possibly our best panel that we've actually had, because I think we've got minds in this room that are amazing. So we've got the head of product marketing and PR of a premium automotive brand at the forefront of digitalization and electric mobility. Taryn has been a force abroad in the public and financial sectors and locally at the automotive VW Group, with decorated stints in the marketing and product divisions at Volkswagen passenger commercial vehicles before stepping into her current role. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the powerhouse, Rose amongst the thorns, an executive at Audi South Africa, Taryn Knight. Thank you, lady. He looks very, very young. I think it's a creative bone in him. And he began his career in digital advertising in the early 90s when the internet was still new. No, that's the wrong one. That is
Jared's
definitely
the young-looking one.
This is the man. Yeah, no, Hayden, you don't look young, my friend. When the internet was still very new and not very well understood. As a result, he learned almost everything he knows on the job and has helped shape the digital marketing industry in South Africa today, starting the country's first digital agency in the process. He also has lots to say about many things, including AI. A current board member of the ACA, founder of the IAB South Africa, and CEO of VML Y&R, Mr. Jared Sinman. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. The current chairman of the IAB, now you can go back to Hayden. The current chairman of the IAB in South Africa, he sits on the Lourdes Committee, the Marketing Achievement Awards Council, and beyond the industry, he gives back to a sport that he's always, always loved, that saw him reach the national team as the marketing and sponsorship executive at the South African Hockey Association. He currently leads a 600+ strong team to deliver solutions in product innovation, in marketing and sales, in e-commerce, in business growth and service. The man who got me into loving technology and wanting to be intrigued by it. He is the EMEA Growth Officer for Accenture Song, Hayden Townsend.
Thank you. There's the press release. My new title just went out, so thank you.
Oh,
No, I'm joking.
is that another one? Hayden, I think Accenture's still trying to figure out where to place him. I had like 5 different titles every time we were talking. But I think this one is today's one, ne?
Recent.
Right. A man passionate about the fusion of creativity and technology, driving innovation through data-informed creative strategies and the transformative power of AI. His ultimate goal is to use technology to drive innovation, to optimize efficiencies, to improve return on investment, very good, whilst retaining the magic of creativity. He spent his time in publishing, in advertising, in television, before his current role as head of creative at Google, and the man who's been on our panel before, because he's so smart, Artwell Nwila. Welcome. And then, sure, this one's going to take me long. So I think the industry, and especially the creatives, you need to know this man, like edge his face in your minds, because he's the guy that's fighting for the industry with all the legislations that are he fights for us, and he's got papers that are sitting fighting the president for some copyright laws, and artists things, a lot of things that I don't understand. But he's like the legal eagle.
It's all good for you.
Exactly, he's the legal eagle that fights for us. So he's a man that you actually want to know.
I was also created by AI, by the way.
So this man with a broad smile specializes in intellectual property law with a focus on trademark, copyright, and entertainment law. a fellow of the South African Institute of Intellectual Property Law, and a member of its copyright, international treaties, and traditional knowledge committees. He has co-authored numerous submissions and made oral representations to Parliament on draft IP legislation. He actively advises local and international clients on IP policy matters and engages governments on the continent, very good, on IP issues and related legislative developments. Stephen Hollis is a partner at leading law firm Adams & Adams. Thank you, Stephen. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot and say, elevator pitch. I was going to say 2 minutes, but I'm going to do it as an elevator pitch, right?
How long's an elevator pitch?
Yeah.
15 seconds.
How tall's the building?
Okay, not quite 15, but you can take 2 minutes. Introducing your thoughts on AI's impact on effectiveness. In 2 minutes, jump in.
You're going to volunteer?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, no, I'll direct it, then you go, Hayden.
Oh, I volunteered myself there, clearly. To start, I suppose, let me just do the quick PR announcement that's sitting in my inbox. So up until a month and a half ago, I was still the lead of Accenture Song in Africa. And a month and a half ago, I moved to Greece. I am now the EMEA Growth Officer for Accenture Song. And I'm looking after all of the agency new business from out in London. They don't think they're part of Europe, but we still consider them part of Europe. So Droga in Ireland and in London, plus all of the agencies we've acquired, including the King James Group here. So even though that's been a month and a half ago, for the last, say, 2.5 years ago, I'm looking at Charlene because she's been on the journey with us. We've been working with these agencies, and we've been trying to sell South African talent because we're highly qualified, overqualified creatively, but very cheap. So we thought we'd make use of this rand of ours. And that was going very, very well until I'd say about 4 or 5 months ago, when we were no longer the question about kind of low-cost or mid-cost locations. The generative AI conversation came up, and it started to come up in the context of actually efficiency, not effectiveness. So it was very much around cost saving. Can you do more? And the irony is that we can do a whole lot more, probably 200, 300, 400% more with less people. But the impact's being felt in this area where the content is the vast plethora of, I was going to use a word I shouldn't use, but stuff that we throw at the internet every day, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pieces of content. And that's where the AI questions are coming in. So we are going to get more efficient, but I also think the opportunity is to become more effective because we can personalize. I think the opportunity for hyper-personalization is now there. We never had it before. I think we can do it now. I guess the only problem is that we're going to do it with less people. And we're going to be doing it with bottom of the pyramid work. I think our creative agencies haven't been impacted that much, and maybe it's early days. But I think that's about forward-thinking work. It's about not using the past. It's about coming up with things that were never done. And large language models don't cope well with that. They cope well with the past and repetition and patterns. So for me, I think we're going to get more effective, but it's going to plateau. And over time, there'll be a pendulum back to creativity, but a much smaller industry, I think.
Thank you, Hayden. And Jared, as a man who's all about forward thinking, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the last thing you said, but everything else I think is right.
I wouldn't have it any other way, Jared.
I'm not sure. I mean, you'd have to define what you mean by effectiveness, I suppose. But I think what AI does right now is it raises the bar on mediocrity. So the mediocre junk is much easier to make, and it's much easier to get out there. That is unfortunately lulling us into a false sense of security because we think that's all it's going to be able to do. But the truth is I always say we're at the Nokia 2110 stage of AI. And it's as hard to imagine what we're going to be able to do with it in the next 10 years as it was to imagine an iPhone in the mid-90s. So I think, I think there are many ways to answer the question about how it can be more effective, how it can make us more effective. I think it depends on what you mean by effectiveness. It's certainly I'll just, I guess, zone in on one thing, which is optimization and the evolution of content. It is possible now to be, and will imminently be possible in more media, to be far more responsive to data, far more responsive to user behavior and preferences. So in theory, we should be able to generate much more relevant content at a much faster pace. So, you know, that's, I guess, one definition of effectiveness.
Okay, not dissimilar to the hyper-personalization that Hayden was talking about. So I'm glad that even though you disagree with the last part, you kind of walk in the same road. Taryn, let's help him define effectiveness from the form of marketing.
Yeah, I think, you know, if I were to consider myself as like maybe the client voice in the panel, you know, I'm probably going to be a little bit more basic. You know, if I think of effectiveness, I obviously look at every step in what I'm involved in, and I kind of say, well, you know, I've already seen some impact in terms of the effectiveness of the ability to discuss ideas through the use of generative AI in our tissue sessions, you know, with the agency. I've seen much more effectiveness in terms of growing an idea beyond what may have been possible with just multiple persons in the room iterating on an idea, to the point where, you know, a campaign concept grows beyond what the originator could have ever imagined it could be, because you're iterating at a much faster pace and building on that. So, you know, effectiveness in the creative process. I mean, massive effectiveness in terms of media targeting. And if we think about the exponential growth in content creation just by the democratization of content creation tools, then you say, okay, well, we need something as equally impactful in terms of scanning this content in order to say, well, what is it that appeals to our audiences and people that are really prone to our products? So, you know, we've needed to get to that point where we can scan the amount of content so that we can really target and find the right content to place our ads in or our content in. So for me, effective, absolutely. You know, I mean, the efficient thing goes without saying, but the effectiveness, absolutely. And it's about our way of defining what is effective at every single stage of what we do, not just the end result of a campaign.
I think that's great, and I think from an Effie's perspective, that is exactly what it's about. It's not necessarily about the end results and how did it do, but it's about the journey as well, right? And pulling up all those effective letters along the way. How do you guys do it at Google?
Well, I'm more likely going to speak from the point of view of how I am getting engaged by clients and media agencies, because it's not so much about how we do it.
Okay.
So one of the low-hanging fruits that we see for creative is specifically personalization. And the interesting about personalization is that it's been around before the whole hype around AI. But what's happened parallel is that now we're going into a cookieless world, and personalization as it exists can't be used because of personalization. So what we need to do is use environmental signals, right? Like things like geolocation and all those things. Now, what I'm starting to see is people using AI to, you know, efficiently find solutions for this new world that we're going into. So it's about finding new solutions in a creative world. And that's what creative is about, right? It's about finding new solutions and just having a wide array of those options to choose from. What worries me, though, is a lot of the conversations that I do have with external parties seem to revolve purely around mostly efficiency and less effectiveness. And the efficiency that they're talking about is, you know, how can I make this by cutting down costs of all these other things? But basically, how do I make this by cutting out a whole segment of the industry, which I think is a very lazy approach. But I would love to hear more of the effectiveness side of it as opposed to constantly harping on about efficiency, which efficiency it does do. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I mean, we come from an industry that is that talks very much around effectiveness, because I guess we answer the client brief that says, "Did it work?" Right? And I think, Hayden, you find yourself in a space where now you're having to talk about not just effectiveness but efficiencies and how those two worlds collide. We'll come back to that. I want to locate your stance on AI, and especially within the industry and the conversation we're having tonight.
Well, I love AI, and I think just a general comment, we've been engaging with AI systems for much longer than we think as individuals. You know, Siri or Alexa, and they get smarter the more you talk to them. And also Netflix uses one of the early adopters of AI to make personalized recommendations. And it's interesting, even their thumbnails are generated by AI systems. Those thumbnails could select what it believes to be the best image for that film to grab the attention of the particular viewer. The thumbnail on your Netflix homepage might look a little bit different to mine. I like scary movies, so maybe I'll get something that really jumps out at you. But they've recognized that you've got a second to capture the attention and to hold the attention of your consumer, and hopefully to make a conversion and to tie all that in. So I love the use of technology wherever it benefits us people. There's much broader uses of AI that are super interesting. I mean, I read recently of an Oracle data center that's based in England, Reading, in the countryside, that monitors beehives and the behaviors of bees, recognizing that 75% of the crops or agriculture around the world very much depend on insect pollination and bee pollination. And with that AI, understanding how better to look after bees. Now, I know that's completely off topic for advertising, but what I'm trying to say is that technology is unbelievable when we utilize it in the correct way. I think that currently AI was not designed, I would like to think that it wasn't designed to replace people for efficiency. We're going to need more people. We're going to need more skilled people. Companies and ad agencies are going to have to employ people who understand the AI systems that they work on. It's one thing to get the applications. It's another actually to understand how best to utilize it for your business. But now I sound like an advertiser, and I'm not. I'm actually a lawyer. So those are just my thoughts. You asked me for my thoughts, and it's funny how the lawyers always get asked to comment last, because then I think folks know that the bad news is better to leave that for last. Let's start with the good stuff. No, I'm just kidding. There's good news and bad news. I guess what I'll talk a little bit about during this dialogue today, particularly with a focus on the ad industry, is questions around generative AI and who owns the intellectual property.
Correct.
So you've got agencies that utilize AI to generate new creative campaigns, to generate creative materials, to design brands, to launch campaigns. But of the materials that are generated, when you sign off to the client, what do you actually hand over? You might think that you own the intellectual property rights in the generated content, maybe you don't. Does the AI system own it? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But we'll talk a little bit about that some more. But the intellectual property concern in who owns the content is one thing, and then there's additional issues. What if you're an agency? There's always going to be a risk of over-reliance on AI. So like I said, do not take the human element out of it. AI is meant for human supervision and management. It's meant to actually be directed to give the business the information that it needs to achieve the best commercial results, to maybe use predictive analysis and to be able to steer campaigns and to adjust real time depending on consumer feedback. But what if your content that you create with AI for a client, with over-reliance thereon, you actually generate content that might infringe on somebody else's intellectual property rights without you knowing it. All of a sudden, somebody sues you. Who do they come after normally? They come after the client, they come after the ad agency. And then it's not good enough to throw your hands in the air and say, well, we use AI to do it. Because AI is and more often than not, the negative PR associated with a court action before the matter even gets to court can be much more damaging than an actual negative court finding and fine. So the legislative and the legal space is so unregulated at the moment. It's super interesting to see what's going on, but I'll tell you a bit more about that later on.
I think you've already told us all of it. I'm kidding. But, because you spoke about it, Taryn, you and I were having a chat earlier about an over-reliance of utilizing AI for content generation, and where technology and human creative capabilities actually meet. But before you answer that, so Taryn's just launched an AI-driven campaign. Can we please play that film?
For decades, Audi has been defined by progress, using technology to blur the lines between concept and reality, and taking the automotive industry forward with every new innovation. Audi was launching a new range of vehicles with features curated from the best of Audi. But they weren't available in South Africa yet. So how do we get consumers to buy a car that isn't ready? You get them to buy into a vision. Introducing a curated collection by Audi. Harnessing the power of AI, we took each line, feature, and shape of the special edition range and used it to inspire visions of a world beyond mobility. Then, through the craft of the human touch, we fed, learned, iterated, crafted, and created a campaign that reimagined the world of Audi, from architecture to fashion. The collection inspired audiences and exposed new eyes to the Audi vision through digitally integrated content, retargeting audiences with each new piece from the collection. With attention grabbed, we released the cars. This collection didn't just capture the audience's imagination, it captivated their curiosity and aspirations. Showing that when human creativity intersects with the power of AI, we can create new visions of progress.
I mean, that's awesome when brands can start to speak almost beyond their category, and they start to live beyond that space and start to drive conversations. What I'm interested in here is whether your media buy was also, whether you brought in AI for your media buy to get that very, very nuanced audience set, particularly because your cars are quite luxury.
So, the short answer is absolutely yes. And I think, for the media folk in the room, obviously, you're kind of looking and probably rolling your eyes and going, but come on, we've had AI in the work that we've done for ages. Your channel optimizations and all of those things have always used a form of AI. I think for us, what we were most excited about this campaign is that every area of it, took the latest technologies in AI. So, I'll start with the end in mind and talk to media. Yes, absolutely. We use AI in this campaign in particular because we want to get beyond the usual of demographics when you are targeting your audiences. I mean, for a long time, we've been talking about attitudinal and behavioral indicators to help us identify who our audiences are, because for the longest time, those kind of usual demographics and things like that have been irrelevant. It's about psychographics and interests. So, how do you take so many data points around what your audience is doing, how they're interacting on your owned platforms, the numerous data points that we have in terms of the interaction with the product, and how do you put that towards targeting and finding your audiences online? So that was, one of the things that we've really honed much more on this, much more granular tracking and feeding that back in real time so that, immediately you're able to apply those learnings in your targeting and retargeting in all areas of, the customer exploration through to a lead. And then the other thing, which I think was particularly exciting for us from a media point of view, is knowing exactly not only which channels to use, but which content within those channels. So the ability to, for example, YouTube scan all the content in all the videos, that meet your set based on your understanding of your audience, and then say, all right, within that consideration set, which of the videos are the best ones to place our adverts in or place our content in. So you really are, I mean, you cannot do that as a human. It's absolutely impossible. So you've got to, employ AI to do that kind of thing. Read all the articles that are being posted on a daily basis to know, okay, within these channels, these are the articles that your content should be placed in, and these are the ones you definitely don't want to appear in. So, I mean, that's what's incredibly exciting. And when you draw it back to effectiveness, that's when you really have a game changer in terms of your media placement.
So is the campaign working?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to just say that our agency was horrified that I wanted to share this video with you this evening, because they're like, but the campaign's not finished yet, and we haven't really put all the metrics in. This is the Effies. You can't do that to us. And I was like, oh, relax. This is a safe space. So it is. I mean, it's been, if we think about, we always looking at our benchmarks, and not industry benchmarks. We're saying, what is the best we've ever achieved, even more so, and like, how do we improve that? Because generally we've been very lucky in hitting industry benchmarks and then some. So, it's allowed us to really see the effectiveness and take what we've done to the next level. So we've been really, really excited about what we've been able to achieve with this campaign. And, even the content of the campaign, not to shoot all my bullets in my gun too soon, but, this kind of campaign would never have been possible in the timelines that we had. So you talk about efficiencies, if I can just... I mean, if you look at something like that, you'd have to not only spec the cars, produce the cars, ship them here. That's a 6 to 8 week process if you rush it, okay, if you get it right. Then you've got to shoot your cars, brief all of the architects, designers, etc. They've got to create the elements, then you've got to shoot the elements. I mean, you're talking about months. And all of this was done and achieved within a 3-month period from, and things could run concurrently. We could produce the cars whilst we were working on the idea, producing the campaign. So, I mean, it just absolutely blew my mind, because it opened up a campaign concept to us that would never have been possible with the restrictions we had around time and budget in that, in that space.
So AI in advertising is like precision marketing, right?
I would say that's definitely an element, absolutely.
And precision marketing needs data. I look at you, Hayden, because you come from...
I'm not a data guy.
You come from a space that is very much about data science and how that pulls into everything, data science, data analytics, and how all of that pulls into the work that we do, right? Because AI makes sense of all of this data. We've got all of this data that sits everywhere. We pull it into a funnel, and then AI has to make sense of all of that data. Archwell's nodding and agreeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the data hype I struggled with for a long time. So to be on the other side of the fence, I just felt like it was a lot of lip service, to be honest. Like we weren't really using the data properly, because the data is so vast that we actually cannot do much with it. So it was almost within the limits of the human being that the data was there. So like, how far could you go with it? So, we were starting to do, a bit of predictive stuff, or some diagnostic stuff, but that's not very clever, right? And what this stuff's doing is it's generative.
Correct.
It's creating things that didn't exist from your data in the past. So I almost feel like it was this journey to now. Like it was the precursor to generative AI. I heard one of our guys talking, like to train these modules, it's a football field with data servers filled, and 850 of them stacked on top of each other with data on, just to train one large language model. Now you look at that amount of data, we can't even generate that now. And in the beginning, we were getting scared of the amount of information on the internet and going like, oh, it's too much. Now it's actually about search and narrowing it. And now all that data goes in. So, I think I'm finally starting to see the means to the end was data, and the end is the ability to recreate from what we've learned in the past.
Yeah. The end is the ability to take the data, feed it into the machine, and let the machine learn and evolve and adapt, right? And get us to where we are today. So, Artwell, you were nodding when Hayden was talking, then you were nodding very vigorously. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell us.
I have a tendency of nodding a lot. So from what's interesting is just the thought of what the new creative looks like, right? I've heard narratives of creatives need to be hardcore in data. I don't believe that. I still think creative stays creative. But I do believe that there needs to be an appreciation for data. I mean, we all know that personalization can't be created without an appreciation for the insights that you get from the data, right? So what does it mean now when we go into a world where we're talking about AI, where there's we're inundated with a lot of data, but we have machines that can take this structured and unstructured data and make it make sense for us? I don't know what the answer is, but it's an exciting opportunity for us as creatives, because it's no longer about us being data scientists, but we have the resources to make sense of this noise and come up with some really cool stuff. But that's where the human comes in, right? Because we're the ones who can really find gems in all the noise.
Human in AI.
Yes.
I think there always has to be a human in AI. Stephen, you spoke about that when in your elevator pitch of 5 minutes. You spoke about the human in AI, because I think many of us, AI has become very zeitgeisty, to talk about AI. It's part of the mainstream conversation. But I think now, obviously, it's moving into a space where we are actually using it, right? But we're also fearful of it, because we don't necessarily understand it. We don't necessarily know how to put it into our businesses to make it work for us. Locate us how we keep ourselves in check, right, from a legal perspective, given that AI can run away and run wild, right? So where does the human and the AI come in? And I ask you this question only because you raised it. This pen that I'm sitting here with is writing notes here.
Okay.
You raised it earlier,
Paying
so...
attention. Just kidding. Yes, so look, just maybe a little precursor as well. The AI poses unbelievable opportunities for growth, all industries, advertising and other industries. But when we look at the creative industries, it also poses massive, massive risks if it's let loose to just go about without bounds. Because for every responsible operator like Google and for every ethical operator like Meta, there's 100 or 1,000 unethical operators who will scrape the internet for data without getting consent from any of the content owners, who will feed that into applications. A recent example of that in the US and also the UK, Getty Images sued Stability AI for scraping something like 12 million images from their website without their permission, putting it in an app that does image regeneration. But funny enough, some of the images that were regenerated still carried the Getty's watermark. And it's so therefore bearing its brand, which is another issue from an IP perspective. And there's big litigation coming on. We have to look after our creative industries, because the creative industries create the content and the quality content that is fed into the AI systems and that give it its value. There was a IBM computer scientist in the 70s who came up, I think, who coined the phrase garbage in, garbage out, which is still so prevalent today. So the tech firms depend on creatives to come up with quality content that it can actually produce equally quality content. One of the fundamental weaknesses of AI is that it trains on existing content. It sees patterns and it creates something different, but it just sort of rearranges current knowledge. It doesn't create new knowledge. It depends on us to do that. And there needs to be that collaboration. So if we don't look after the creative industries, that actually, so you'll see there's also a lot of flooding of the marketplace with low quality derivatives of existing works. I saw recently Amazon took some action when, of the 100 top bestseller list, and I think it was young romance adult or something, only 19 were written by humans. The other books were actually garbage generated by AI, humans abusing AI to then spam the Amazon Kindle list to try to monetize that in some way. And so the thing is, if we don't, then there needs to be regulation, and there is no regulation. South Africa doesn't have an approach to AI. Our government is way behind on that front. The Department of Communications and Digital Technologies recently held an AI summit and released like a what do you call it, like a dialogue paper or discussion paper, but that's in its infancy stage. Post-elections, that will begin. But if you look at elsewhere, you've got the US saying something needs to be done. The US already last year started to, Congress started to look into, and also the US Copyright Office to say, we need to figure out what is the legal status of stuff that's being generated by AI. Who owns the content? Secondly, the tech firms that feed data into their systems to train their systems and create new outputs, do they need permission from rights holders to do that, or can they sort of fly under the radar of copyright exceptions, like fair use in the United States, which allows you to make use in certain instances without paying or without getting the permission of the content owner? But what does that do? If you feed in creative content, let's say you're an author and your works are just fed into these systems, and with a click of a button, somebody can write the next, let's say, Dion Meyer thriller novel. You can say to your AI system, please write me a new novel like Dion Meyer. I like his stuff. That's in his style, and I'm going to read that. Click, it's free. Yeah, I'm reading Dion Meyer, but written by AI. And then you start flooding the market with that. Spotify will tell you that they recently released some info to say they've uploaded 120,000 songs a day, of which 1% of those songs will actually get played by somebody, get streamed. The others get lost in the noise. Now, if you add AI-generated thousands upon thousands upon thousands of songs, it's almost similar to click fraud in the advertising space, right? So where you get spammers who actually just create these works for ulterior purposes. So something needs to be done. There is the EU Parliament took the lead and actually enacted an AI Act last month. It's quite a long document, over 200 pages or so, and the reactions have been mixed. Tech firms are saying, look, you're now over-regulating us. It's going to cause problems for startups. There are more obligations on transparency so that AI firms need to disclose more information on what data they've actually trained their systems on. And whether there's any copyright infringements in that process. But the thing is, in South Africa, we're also going to need an approach, because as it stands, AI that's generated predominantly by a machine does not generate intellectual property rights.
Yeah.
So if you're an agency that uses a system, somebody sits and produces an output that you don't have a strong degree of control over the creative process. If you just put in a prompt and the magic happens and something comes out, you don't own the IP rights in that. So you cannot say to your client that I've created this work in which you own IP. It's not always a problem. The client won't mind in many instances, maybe most instances. But let's say you're tasked to develop a new brand and a new logo, and you can't hand over the intellectual property rights to the client, or you think you've got it, and you say in a contract, I'll give you a copyright transfer, but actually you're transferring nothing. So on the IP front, agencies will have to take legal advice on consider how much do you rely on a generative AI to create new works? What type of campaigns do you use this for? In which instances does your client want you to be able to transfer full rights to them? In those instances, you'll have to make use of humans, and also of humans who use AI as a creative enhancer rather than a creative producer of sorts. So the consideration of how to use AI will go hand in hand in your business around understanding what intellectual property implications there would be. And I think you'll get a lot more clients, especially international clients, with the developments in the US and the EU, saying we want a little bit more transparency to know how much of this is pre-generated AI content that you're giving to us. Because remember, as an agency, if you work on efficiency alone, another agency that is maybe way less experienced than your agency can also put in the same prompt and get the same data. and then all of a sudden pitch
Absolutely.
the same creative concept and related materials. And that's where you need the human differentiator. I don't think that, I think that's a power that we will forever retain over the machine, hopefully,
Yeah.
that we can write the most compelling narratives that are authentic and that resonate with our audiences, whether in advertising, film and television, music, and let's not lose sight of that.
See, I told you, he's a guy you want to be close to here because he knows a lot about our industry. But you raised two very important points. And I think the first one is to say to the chair of the ACA, here's a project, right? He's literally just spoken about the whole brief. The session is being recorded. I actually was supposed to tell you this up front, but I'm telling you now. And especially so that you can take this recording and take everything he said and brief the committee, because I think from an industry perspective, this is great. But then the second part of it, here's a man who, mid-2022, Jared, he's saying creatives' jobs are safe, right? He's saying the creative industry will still be required to produce the work that AI can then take on. This guy had an AI copywriter mid-2022, which I think is super exciting. We also have an AI analytics, data science analytics in our business. So I love that. So what's your guy's name called, and how do you use Mr. AI in your shop?
I mean, that was a while ago, like several generations
2022.
of technology.
ChatGPT
so I
one.
don't even, it's probably not a very interesting story anymore. Look, I think just to comment on everything that's been said, I think we're being slightly delusional, because if you look at the stated goal of OpenAI, it is to invent artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence is a replacement. The intention is to create a full replacement for the human brain. Now, estimates vary. Might take a decade, might take 2 decades, but it also might take 2 years. And this notion that we are somehow protected by some little magic spark inside people that can't be replicated by a machine, I think is fundamentally delusional. I think that it's a misunderstanding of how the human brain works. I think it's a misunderstanding of what creativity actually is. So this notion that humans will always be necessary and humans will always be a key part, I think that is fundamentally wrong. And I can prove that to you because 5 years ago, if I'd said, I need a photograph of the Empire State Building in New York, and I'd said to you, a computer can generate a photorealistic image of that with any text description, you would have told me that was impossible. There's no way that a machine can do that. Machine learning and has been around for 50 years. And for almost the entirety of that 50 years, it was impossible to do what we can do with it today.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, I think that we are living in a kind of honeymoon phase where the AI is just poor enough that it needs us to help it to do what it's doing.
Yeah.
The notion that, for example, it needs to consume human-generated content, it's already consumed all of the human-generated content on the planet. It's gone. That battle's lost. It's consumed it. It's read every book. It's looked at every visual image. It's already in the system. So yes, there's some tidying up to be done if the tech companies lose some of these lawsuits. And by the way, this is not solved. There are lawsuits ongoing. So that no lawsuits have found yet that any copyright was breached in the consumption of the stuff. But even if it does turn out that Google gets sued or OpenAI gets sued and has to pay a settlement to some of the copyright holders, it's actually irrelevant because it's in the system already. The question is now, can it take what it's learned and produce something that's good enough that it can actually stand head to head with what humans can do? And right now, it can't. But my point of view is that is a matter of time. It is not a matter of principle. There's nothing about the trajectory of where these systems are going that convinces me that there's much of a place for a human being in the content generation world in 1 or 2 decades maximum.
Hayden, what
If
do
I
you
can-
think?
Karen, go for it.
No, I found, what both of you gentlemen said, very, very interesting. And I think it is really, really important. I mean, the two things that I mentioned that were quite key for me is talking about the importance of the human element of this technology. And the second thing was around brand safety. Because we're at that, I think we're probably already past that point where, everyone gets hyped about AI and then, a lot of people run off and start using it without thinking. But I think, the points that you're making around the danger of AI and what it's capable of and the replacement of that human creative element, etc., is, there is an element of that. And I think, over December, after Joe Rogan interviewed the two gentlemen who did The Social Dilemma, please forgive me, I'm terrible with names and I have forgotten their names. But, he kind of did it, and then, I then started looking into the talks that they've given a couple of months ago, and I found it deeply interesting in terms, and quite scary, very, very scary. And, and I would highly, recommend that everybody educates themselves in terms of the danger of AI around what could be possible before you even go into it and you delve into it. And yet also the legal elements of it have also interested me, as not just because I come from a family of lawyers, it's critically important. And I think from a brand safety point of view, you also need to make sure that you're working with agencies that are very responsible. And the only reason a campaign like ours was possible is because our agency, as part of a global group, had created a secure garden within which the creatives can play, and that we know that our brand is safe, and that we know, that the necessary due diligence is done around what is created there. So those are absolutely both critically important elements of what we do with any new technology, is to use it responsibly to make sure that we're looking at all of the necessary elements. And, for us as a brand, and I suppose clients are always going to claim this, is, human centricity is really important, and we have to walk forward consciously and really educate ourselves in terms of both the dangers and the opportunities as we take every next step.
But the problem is we're not walking forward conscious. So the thing is, what I struggle with in these debates is actually the right move for the human race is to sign an international treaty to govern how these technologies are developed and how these technologies are used. Because it is as dangerous, probably, as a nuclear bomb was when the international nuclear treaties were signed. The problem is we're not doing that.
Yeah.
The tech companies are out of the gate and 500 miles down the road. So to suddenly wake up as governments across the world are doing and go, I think there might be a problem here. It's a little bit late to do that.
Which is the
It's
reality,
very
though.
hard to rein this stuff back in. And I think the point is that the problem is that the dilemma we face now is we have the magic tools, but actually the genie is out of the bottle.
Correct.
And it's not obvious to me how, as a species, we're going to rein it back in again.
And I think you're absolutely, the genie is definitely out of the bottle, right? And which is what you spoke to, Stephen, as well, to go, it's already out there. How do we rein it in?
We're going to need AI to rein AI in.
I
agree with what you say, Jared, and it is scary. Some of the risks that AI pose beyond what we've mentioned for content creation is, cyber criminals are relying on AI with today they've got much better data processing capabilities of their own. They can use deep fakes of people's faces, their voices to bypass biometric data, etc. So it's actually a global discussion to be had. But on the intellectual property and the content creation side, like I mentioned earlier, if we don't look after our human creators, that's who we should be looking after, and make sure that there's a responsible usage of AI. The EU AI Act is therefore probably a step in the right direction. It's just a first kickoff, but it is a comprehensive response. If you look at what happened in just a quick example of where AI actually saved the day after new technology disrupted a market, the music industry. You had CDs in the 90s. all of a sudden you had MP3 file compression. And then a computer scientist there in America, a student, came up with the Napster website and enabled people to make their music libraries available. And people were just copying music and pasting from each other libraries. Mass scale piracy and copyright infringement. By global record sales dropped by 50% between 2000 and 2010. And by 2008, I think IFPI, the International Phonographic Association, estimated that 95% of music people listen to are pirated. Spotify was an early adopter of AI, and actually maybe the first. After Apple released music, but you could select your hits. But Spotify came out and said, hang on, let's learn from the mistakes that happened before. There's a market. People actually want 24/7 access to full music catalogs. Let's give it to them, but we license it from the content owners, and we get a license fee payments, and we distribute it to the rights holders. And that's, I think, what saved the day for the music industry was actually adaptive AI. And so in this instance, if you think what can be done to rein things in, AI could be deployed, and yeah, Artwell and his team will have to get creative. Maybe they're already working on it, to maybe recognize in data sets. So if you've got generative AI producing new outputs, to actually detect through metadata whether, let's say, a certain writer's use or a certain musician or content creator's works were actually used in that generated output. Don't know if that would be possible. But if so, you said we don't know what's going to be possible in a few years, so maybe. And then to monetize that and to make sure some remuneration flows back to the content creators on whose works the new output was based. And maybe even some, let's call it attribution. So if you were to create a campaign and it's AI, and there were some significant people's works that it was contributed from, they will benefit from being mentioned as AI-inspired pre-creators. So that's one example. But what Spotify taught us is that by using adaptive AI in a way, that saved the music industry after disruptive technology almost ruined it. And an industry that all of us love. I mean, come on. The music is part of us.
But I think in our industry, adoption is very slow. So Hayden, you, and then Artwell, I'd like you to weigh in on what's been just said, being at Google, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've got a problem that's so near to us. I mean, I agree with all these things. One day, hopefully something will fix it and regulate. But we are sitting now, the bulk of our industry, I mean, we're all sitting in this industry, right? We're deciding here, if you listen to Altman, he say, 95% of the industry will be automated, Gartner saying 30%. Yeah. It's probably going to sit somewhere in the middle, right? The industry is going to be cut in half within the next year to 2 years. Tomorrow morning, we are pitching to a global client in Singapore who's asked us if we open to a bot. I was like, of course we can build you a chat bot. They said, no, build, operate, transfer. So I was like, oh, so what? So you build it, we give us the tools, we operate it, and within 3 years you give it to us. I'm saying, so I must give it to you and I'm out of business in 3 years. And then we do that 10, 20, 30 times. And this is a global client that's sitting there. So we kind of going, okay, where is that level tomorrow morning going to go? You know, the impact is right here in our industry. And that's why, I mean, I partially agree with you, Jared. It is the party line at the moment. You know, David Droger's walking around saying we got to double down on creativity because that's where it is. We don't know how far it will go, but there will probably be a cluster of people. But as an industry, we are facing an existential crisis. Like literally right now, there's not a single pitch brief coming out at the moment that the client doesn't ask, how can you give this to me? Why? Because the tools are going to get democratized. Yeah. The clients are going to come out of, marketeers are going to come out of marketing classes, and the line between advertising and marketing is going to completely evaporate. Exactly. Because now your marketer can put in a brief and it's generating the content in real time. Exactly. Right? So then you go, okay, maybe it's a good thing for marketing and advertising to come back together again. So, you know, we're facing real threats, and of course there are the big ones where it will take over the world. But as an industry, I think we really need to think hard about, never mind commercial models and, you know, talking about gain share and all these things. the retainer model's dead because it's based on hours. It's based on people.
Yeah, yeah.
We sell a long tail of people. The clients joke when we pull the bus in. Why? Because I must put 100 people on the retainer
Yeah.
to make money. This thing is built for the exact opposite. We're going to do double with half the people.
Yeah, that is exactly right. And I think, the way I've been explaining this to people is if you take a film, let's imagine a movie. The person who, if everyone says, well, it's okay, you'll always need humans for creativity, I'll say, okay, so the director has a job. But every other job, the cameraman, the person building the sets, the special effects creator, the sound engineer, every other job is gone. And that is actually the scale of the calamity that faces this industry, because it isn't comforting to say, well, your chief creative officer and your executive creative director have a job.
That's the 5%
Great.
that remains.
That's not where we make money in an agency. We make money in an agency by producing tons of collateral and
Yeah.
downs of ads and,
Yeah.
With
So
tons of
I
people.
agree completely with what Hayden's saying. I don't think this industry is grappling enough, even nearly enough, with the scale of impact that this stuff's going to have. The clients are starting to move faster than we are in seeing those cost advantages. And the big tech players that are building marketing automation systems, that are selling those systems to clients, are selling them the means of our destruction, essentially.
Yeah.
Because they're selling them the tools that they can use to make us irrelevant. And I'm not sure what we can do about it, because at the end of the day, it's not about the ACA forming a committee that goes, it's like what the Hollywood actors just did and went on strike against AI in Hollywood. It's kind of comical. You can't strike against the progress of technology. It's so, yeah.
No, it's amazing. And even like influencers and all these things. I mean, right now, I just saw a recent example where they just got permission from an actor to generate them and use them as an influencer. So we don't even need to shoot to cast to be them. It's a signature and a bit of money. Now, the question is how do you become an influencer, as a human being when you're competing against these digital virtual influencers? But brands are sponsoring
These virtual
generative
influencers, yes.
because people are believing them to be real. And
Exactly.
the tide is moving. So I guess it's probably thinking about those new commercial models already and where we are as an industry that needs to happen.
And I think,
That's
going
frightening.
back to what Stephen says, we really need to look at those. Yes, it's going faster. And I agree that there is a threat, 100%. I'm not disagreeing with what I'm saying is the creativity comes in, where do we go from there? You can't stop it. So the creativity comes in the solution and what the future looks like. And how do we apply technology in a way that changes the jobs? Yes, those particular roles might change, but what does the next thing look like? And that's where the creative has to come in.
The thing that is different about AI as a technological advance compared to any other technology in history is that AI is trying to replace our brains and not our hands.
Yeah.
And that is what is fundamentally different about artificial intelligence. That's why I don't believe that, because people keep saying, in the Industrial Revolution, everyone said machines were going to take away all of our jobs. And look, we created even more jobs. The problem is the machines replaced our hands. So they let us do way more things, but our brains were safe. And our brains as a species are the most valuable parts of our bodies.
And very much having replaced that now.
I worry that there are no replacement jobs. What does a replacement job look like in a world where your competitor is exponentially smarter than you are, faster than you are, and more capable than you are?
I hear you. I'm just more optimistic.
So you're on the 30% side, yeah.
I'm willing
just
to
more
be optimistic.
optimistic.
If someone
And Taryn,
just
I think-
tell me
I think
how.
rightly so.
Look, but I think even if that does happen, we still left, let's say it's 20, 30, 40%, right, of
Yeah.
people, the directors
Yeah.
and the ECDs and the planners, because they're saying, right, you can now have more time to think. I'm gonna take you to it.
Task-based output,
But
right?
not everybody, we know this. Look at that agency, just go look at that retainer list. Look at how many thinkers are there. If there's more than 20% on that retainer thinking, it's a lot. Okay? The rest are they're doing timesheets and call reports and all sorts of amazing things,
Yep.
production schedules. When all of that disappears, you're left with the 20-30%. You cannot, you're going to go to a
Indeed.
boutique.
Ideas companies,
Exactly.
right? For real, I really believe ideas
A
companies are the
boutique that
future.
can make $1 billion Hollywood film.
And will be very wealthy, but very small.
And Jared, if you're saying, what is the solution? Obviously, I can't give you the solution. That takes a culmination of a lot of minds. And you're talking about a global treaty. I can't deliver a global treaty. What I can tell
That's
you...
not what. That's
I'm
not what
sorry, I know that's what I was invited here for, but it's just not going to happen tonight. But I think, what's critically important is voices, like all these different voices, to keep saying, guys, are you seeing the danger? And then other people saying, okay,
you
well,
acting fast
these
enough?
are the important legal aspects of it, and these are the important societal aspects of it.
I think
And
that's right.
We'll move forward together as a collection of experts, and the mere fact that we're having this dialogue this evening is a step in the right direction.
I think that's right, because the bulk of dialogue about AI, if you read up in the media and you listen to podcasts, it's all hyped. It's
Absolutely.
the hype of the promise of the technology. And I just think we have not analyzed carefully enough the impact there's thoughts that we need to create a universal basic income.
Sam Altman's
right?
calling for it, yeah.
Yeah. So that makes perfect sense to say it could be liberating, but it's not going to be liberating if 80% of people end up with no income.
Is that like a SASA card that we have here?
Oh, wow.
Might have to be a bit bigger.
A little
than
bit bigger.
And
I think the important thing here, sorry, Taryn, to cut you off, I will give you an opportunity to speak here. I think the important thing here is that it's what I was saying earlier. The industry is not adopting fast enough. The industry is still sitting and producing the same way and thinking the same way and putting out financial models that look the same. So we as an industry are not adopting fast enough. And clients, incidentally, within the organizational space are moving faster, but not in the marketing realm. It's very few clients who on the marketing side are also moving as fast. So I
Well, on the
think
content
as an
side, they
industry,
are.
marketing industry in its entirety, we're actually moving a lot slower than we should be.
The content, but it's being driven by the desire to save money and get faster and get more accurate and more personalized. So the need is not the one for the existence of our industry. It's,
Yes.
it's the need for their desire. But by virtue of that, Gen Studio from Adobe is going to be launched next month,
Yeah.
right? The thing is complete self-service. It really plugs into everything. It's learned from every piece of Photoshop ever made. Like, how do you compete with that, right? And it's going to go look at the video on the site. Marketers, blah, 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 right? It's not agencies. And I don't think the future marketer is going to be the same version of the current market. They say 70% by 2025 will shift from operational duties to strategic duties.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at a marketing department and you look through there, how often have you got brand managers or agency chasers,
Yeah.
right? So you get the same
Yeah.
problem we have in the agency. There are too few people thinking and too many people doing.
Correct.
It's going to be the same. So there's probably going to have to be something coming. But we're being disintermediated by the tech players and the big ones we're standing next to, right? So we do have to work together, which is what we are trying to do, so we can find a joint solution because we both coexist in this ecosystem.
Just remember that we still have a few advantages over AI, okay? Like I mentioned.
For now.
I love it. Somebody who's trying to give us some
I hear
hope.
what Jared is saying, but I think that we can agree that as things currently stand, so yes, AI might develop to a point where it can mimic a human brain, but guess what? It's mimicking a human brain at that particular point in time. The human experience will keep evolving. And with that, that's what I mentioned earlier. The weakness of the machine is that it can only be trained on the data that it's fed. And if you stop feeding it data or quality data, the output is going to suffer. So also, human beings might very well come back into fashion sometime soon. You know, if you consider the virtual brand ambassadors, that's like a fad, right? There's a lot of fads out there. I don't know if you remember this thing called an NFT or a non-fungible token.
Yeah.
Everyone was up in arms about that. Then you had the metaverse, where all the brands rushed to register their trademarks in the metaverse because we're going to start like selling and buying, Burger King in a virtual space. And all of that sort of got sort of morphed into the background. People were paying for these NFTs and they didn't realize, like hundreds of millions of dollars for like a once-in-a-lifetime painting done by an artist, but they didn't realize they're not even buying the copyright and the content. They're just buying the actual source code unique identifier of this thing. So there's going to be a lot of fads that will just also dissipate, and it is interesting. Like in the K-pop space, Korean pop. There's a virtual band with I read the other day. It's got 25 million followers. So active engagement by people. People are actually finding it interesting to engage with these virtual entities that have personalities. It's something fun, but it's not necessarily something with determinable lasting longevity.
We would have to be.
Yeah.
very
Sorry,
Jared,
Jared. I just want to give a moment to
I've been
Art
trying to
quickly.
get in on this one. So right now, as we're speaking, there's something called Google I/O that's happening right now, right? Where they're announcing the latest innovations within Google. Yesterday, it was ChatGPT.
It was OpenAI. And
OpenAI,
Yep.
they had their versions. And between the space and time between the last Google I/O and now, like what happened last year seems ancient. It's borderline laughable, right? It's so old. But what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks is unimaginable. And I can be honest with you, no tech company can actually tell you where it's going, because I think everybody's trying to figure it out right now. The reality is that industries are going to be changed. We'd have to be blind to not see that. And he speaks correctly. And the industries that are going to be affected are the ones that are based, people who have got like one sort of set of skills and where time is involved. And creative, unfortunately, falls in the space of I charge you for my craft and the amount of time that takes. Whereas AI comes in and does that in a small amount of time. Now, an interesting thought I heard of, I don't know, an interesting thought that I heard of from a podcast was from an artist who was grappling with his reality, and he was saying, he obviously needs to shift his brand and his approach. And he was saying that he believes that in the future, there's going to be a new sort of like proof economy where creative is going to be so easy to create that if you had to create something beautiful, you almost have to prove it, right? So you would need to have rough drafts, the initial artwork, the initial whatever, to prove it. And he assumes that there's going to be true value in showing true craft. Because, I mean, you can go onto your phone right now, go onto Canva and design, something super quickly. So we don't know where that will go. Obviously it will not be to the same scale as AI, right? But I do believe that for us who are in the creative industry, we need to start thinking now about what we look like in the future. I've heard of there's a campaign that went live where, I'm not going to mention the brand, insurance company used AI images, and social media threw a little bit of a fit, and it was mostly designers. Where I'm concerned is, obviously there's the concern for, using that, and it looks like, you're not supporting the community. Where I'm concerned is, what are you doing, to make sure that, you are preparing for what can happen. We can't ignore the fact that lots of jobs will be lost.
Yeah.
I think
That
don't want to
definitely
end
is
on
not-
that note.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Say one thing.
can somebody segue into a positive space?
I'm
I feel like we're in doom and
to a
gloom
positive
here.
space on that like
Do you have the
flippant-
treaty ready?
No, sorry, I've been busy. No, I think, yes, okay, the Industrial Revolution, maybe replaced our hands, and we're worried about the real threat that, AI is like a brain. But I think something that makes us uniquely human is our hearts, and the fact that at this point in time, we remain the only beings that ascribe purpose and meaning and feeling and, to things. And I think that, when you talk about jobs being lost, people will care about that, and people will care in finding a solution that uses this technology and enhances this technology in the right way, like we have in the past. When the camera was invented, painters were worried about what would happen, so they reinvented what they did and they changed slightly. And we've seen this, and the idea is remembering that as human beings, we still remain unique in our abilities to feel, ascribe meaning, and have purpose. And that is what we need to lean on. And I feel like that is a sign that we're finished now. On that alarm.
Please carry on.
I'm
Oh
done.
God, sorry. Guys. It's the one thing that
The
has.
AI doesn't agree with you.
It's the one thing that has permission to make a sound on my phone.
So I wanna, because maybe I shouldn't have ended on that. That was a bit,
Yes, Artwell.
it's not very me. I'm a very happy person. The World Economic Forum shared like a really big number on the numbers that we lost, something around 85 million in developing countries. But then the new industries that will be created is going to, or even connected industries is going to be substantially higher. I do believe that. I do believe that this is why I'm saying that we need, as creatives, and maybe I should say marketers, but as creatives, we need to assess where we are and get ready to move in the direction.
To move with.
So,
yeah.
I do have an optimistic perspective, by the way.
Oh, you do?
May not seem like it. But I think what I'll say is this. I don't think we're necessarily doomed. I just don't think we're having the right conversations
100%.
about it. We are buying into the hype.
Yeah.
We are all playing with these things on our phones, and it's being used in advertising to some extent, and we're all very excited when it is being used. And that was a great piece of work.
Thanks.
But we're not having enough of the conversations about what is the impact going to be. What do we do to mitigate it? What are these roles that we say we're creating? And I think that is something we need to do a hell of a lot more of.
100%.
Because there's too much of a bright, sunny picture being painted. And I hear this within our holding company, within WPP. When they talk privately, they say, this is an existential threat. When they talk publicly, they say, biggest opportunity for creativity ever made.
That's exactly right.
And that's just, we need to stop being delusional about it. We need to put our heads together, and we need to ask these tough questions. What
How do we do that?
What are the options?
How do we do that? Because I agree with you. I think we have a lot of talk shops.
It's a good first step, right? To talk about
the
it.
ACA is the body that represents advertising in South Africa. It should be taking on board this topic as a huge priority, and it should be pulling us together as a group. That is what we need industry bodies to be doing. So that's an example of what we could be doing. I think dialogues like this are great. I think for all of us as individuals, what we can do is just be honest with each other, be honest with what we see, and solutions will emerge from that process.
Send me an invitation. I'll be in that conversation. I agree with you.
Also,
entirely.
I think it's important to remember that intellectual property rights don't vest in these artificially generated works that are automatically generated in the magic black box, where not even the developers can predict the outcome or exactly what's going to come out of it, right? So in that is also an advantage, that whatever human output the agencies produce, they will own the intellectual property rights they're in. They'll be able to transfer that to their clients, and they'll be able to take action on the basis of those rights against third parties if need be. But they'll own the content. So that's a small light in the dark tunnel ahead of us. There is another dark tunnel ahead of us, which we won't have time to talk about today.
With 4 minutes to go.
Not today.
I don't think I don't think Taryn can take any more darkness, right?
Just to put it on your radar, it's the copyright amendment bill that's on President Ramaphosa's desk.
Which would have been better if it had been written by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the ACA did make submissions in that matter together with the CPA. I think very nicely put forward the advertising industry's position. There's a lot of provisions in the bills that has nothing to do with, let's call it the copyright exceptions, which most folks are worried about, but things that will make it very difficult for producers of content in South Africa, for agencies to actually consolidate all rights in a project and to sell it on to a client. And also very, very problematic remuneration provisions for performers. Every performer featured in a work must receive a report from the agency or the client on how this ad is tracking and what money is generated. How do you track how much money is generated? How much money must be paid to each performer? Some of these rights are not transferable. So it creates an environment where local and international clients will start thinking, should we continue to do business under these conditions?
Yeah.
I think the bill will likely be referred to the Constitutional Court by the President because it is so deeply problematic. But that is an area that I must commend the ACA and also the CPA, the Commercial Producers Association, for actually bringing forward a very clear image. Some of the submissions made on behalf of the advertising industry has actually resulted in some small but positive changes made.
By the way, one of the things this bill incentivizes is to use AI, because you don't have to pay performance rights.
I was about to say
to artificially generated models.
Yeah,
So
because
it's
then I
an
don't have to worry
unintended
about
consequence,
talents.
obviously, but it is a potential consequence.
It also turns South Africa into a safe haven for machine learning. So there's such broad exceptions and a much broader fair use excuse or exception than exists in the United States. So tech firms will love it.
Yeah.
Because they might come and select South Africa as a training destination for content, but the impact on creatives will be disastrous because their copyright is being reduced to rubble, and that has implications for them beyond the problem with AI, right? So that's why at the moment
The solution.
Do you want that before or after the question?
So I think that's why we have to also see the sort of the zoomed out picture of where the advertising industry fits in. It fits into smack bang center into the creative industries. It depends on music, it depends on AV, it depends on sound recording, and creative people to come up with ideation and with everything. So this will affect the industry as well, and it's also an important thing to put on the ACA's to-do list to actually develop a stance on what to do next.
See, Tabang's taking
Lots.
notes, so.
There's lots for the ACA to do. I don't want to be selfish. I want to give an opportunity to these very marketers and creators and creatives to pose some questions to you based on everything that you have just said and any other questions. Yeah, sure. You realize we've been talking for an hour and a half, and it doesn't feel like we've covered a lot of ground. Are you running away, Tabang? Okay.
Thanks. So I can start working on this other bill.
Yeah, so if you've got a question right there, please.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Omani. And so listening to everybody here, I mean, I think about how, as human beings, we realize global warming is an issue, right? Because when you think about the 70s, no one really cared. Everybody was a petrolhead, quote unquote. And everybody wanted to drive fast cars and use oil. And the Saudis thought we'll always keep taking that stuff out of the earth and we'll never stop. But at some point, as human beings, we saw that it's actually causing a lot of damage. Yes, we're not there where we need to be, but it's always in our face. I mean, you switch on the news, there's always something happening with weather and pollution in the seas. And I think when you think about AI and turn to the human heart, it will get to a point where even as an industry, as a client, how do you put in briefs when you're seeing such huge unemployment around you. And I think for me, that's the point where I believe the human spirit will always win. Because at some point, we always get to a point where we see what's wrong and yes, accept the technology and what it's done for us, but then we come together to protect ourselves. And I think
that's an incredibly unfortunate example because we are losing comprehensively the climate battle. We are hitting fossil fuel emission records every year. We've got so I think that's an unfortunate example because that's an example of our inability to do something about.
I think, Jared, it's how you look at life, right? So you can look at it the way that you want to see it, and it doesn't make it right because you're feeling doom and gloom. We have to have the tough conversations, I believe, but I also think that the human spirit always wins.
See, I think the problem is if you take any of those examples and we caught it too late, right? Okay. And therein lies the rub. So we and to Jared's point, we're glorifying AI, and it is very exciting. And it is very scary, and we're not sure which side to lean into, and depends which part we're seeing at any given moment. And I think if we don't sound the alarm bell together soon, we could have stopped global warming before, or any other example you think about. And I think that's what it's about. I think the current hype is too positive, and we are being impacted as an industry. We're probably one of the marketing and the customer agenda, e-commerce, customer service. If you look at all the use cases, almost 70% of the use cases are sitting in customer and marketing and consumer. It hasn't really gotten back to supply chain and to all of these other things yet. So we actually are going to be the first to feel the pain. So we need to stand up and talk. So I think it's not that the human spirit can't triumph or won't. It's just that by the time it does, is it going to be too small and is it too late? And that's why we need to start talking now.
I think the very fact, sorry.
So my closing point was we've learned from the human experience, and that's why we're here. And I think the voices need to be louder. So I'm not against what Jared is saying. I think we are glorifying it quite a lot, and we're not talking about the opposite side. And even as agency leaders, are we proactively starting to train? The below the 80%, the client chasers, right? What are we doing about that? Because we can talk about it, and as the thinkers who are at the top, are we protecting those guys, right? Yeah. Or what we're planning to do is changing our model for us as shareholders to keep earning the bottom line. And just, sorry guys, AI and retrench people, knowing the country that we live in. And I think that's where we need to be responsible.
Or are we advancing them? Are we advancing them so that they can thrive in a world of technology and human creativity? Yeah.
Well, I mean, this idea around, our country being a safe haven for certain places offers new opportunities. And when you talk about, most of the applications of AI at the moment in this sort of consumer space, thank goodness, because, I mean, as marketers and agencies, aren't we supposed to be the consumer experts still? There's still a window of opportunity there to be that voice, to have these critical conversations and write the next chapter of the story ourselves.
One of the interventions that we're taking is just to do that, to broaden the scope from communications into looking at the customer journey holistically, looking at all the components of it, so that you become more versatile in a customer-facing individual than I am make ads or I'm a content specialist.
Yeah.
So in this space, I think there are opportunities. We are probably best positioned to capture that, but we're going to have to lean into other areas that we're probably not that comfortable with. But if you're thinking about the human beings at the end and their decision-making and the whole purchase cycle, there are a lot of other areas we can touch on. And I think that's probably going to be half, or at least the start of an answer. That's kind of where we're playing with it at the moment.
I think it comes down to where we went wrong with social media. I mean, if you talk about the social dilemma and the discussions, is, we started incentivizing the wrong things, which led to perhaps a damaging application of technology. So it's really important that we look at this and we say, are we incentivizing the right things in terms of the applications of AI technology? And that's where we have the opportunity to make sure that the industry and the discussions around consumer are targeting the right things. And maybe, where we started this conversation, where we were saying, is it efficiency or is it actually effectiveness? Maybe we need to be going, it's actually effectiveness. that we need to be focusing on and incentivizing in a way in terms of the application of AI.
Yeah. Across the entire value chain.
Absolutely.
Right, and not
Around
necessarily at the
everything
end,
that
yeah.
happens at every point is how do we pull out more effectiveness in this thing? One possibility.
Yeah. Anybody else with don't let the panel scare you guys. They really are not that bad. They're just very opinionated. So please ask your questions.
Can I ask a question? To the lawyer, how has it affected your industry? I'd like to know if AI's...
He's not a lawyer
Is your
anymore.
job
He's
safe?
in the creative fields, this one.
Yeah, I think I wish we had more specialized AI apps to streamline. We do a lot of repetitive stuff, so there's a little gap in the market there. I think with there's the legal profession will and is also being impacted. There's a lot of work that the machine can do that human lawyers cannot do, but it still requires the lawyer's oversight. So some processes can be automated, like for instance maybe the registration of certain IP assets and so forth, that are straightforward things to do, or file management and things like that. But in the end, you're still going to need that human touch in a legal environment. If you've got a legal problem, you want to speak to a human and not a machine. But I think that lawyers will be more open over time and be more reliant on when you prepare a legal opinion or prepare for a court battle, you can use AI tools to actually summarize certain findings, extract data from large sets, and without having to hire researchers to go through it. So I think in the legal profession, it will certainly be used to boost efficiency and effectiveness. And I don't see the same level of risk of job losses maybe from other industries. There's sufficient space there to move people around and to actually get them into other areas where there's repetitive tasks. We've seen this during COVID, when we had to send people and work from home. Yes, some people were retrenched, but a lot of people who were working on basic file management that couldn't do that from home were retrained into other areas in the firm. Most firms did that. So there's always a way to find a way to repurpose and to find different roles for people. But in the creative content industry, what's different here is that the generative AI is actually producing an output that competes with a product that creative agencies are putting out there.
Yeah.
So it's training on their content and then putting out a competing product, right? So that's where the guardrails need to be set up. That's what the EU AI Act is trying to do. It's saying moving forward, if you train your AI systems, even if you train it elsewhere, in another country where there's laxer laws on copyright and machine learning, if your output is going to be used in a product or campaign in the EU, you still need to comply with these obligations. And what they do is they've got a risk assessment approach. So they say these are high-risk applications that can affect humans in a certain way or can influence things like transport systems, how they operate. These are medium risk and these are low risk. Generative AI is probably between low and medium. But it can be high depending on the data that's being consumed. But moving forward, certainly in the EU, and I think other countries, major countries will follow suit. I think the US is not far behind crafting their own solution. There's going to be a lot more emphasis being placed on you need to have a license from the owner of the content with which you train. And this could create new markets for creative agencies that actually start creating data sets of their own that they then license out to tech firms to train their systems on. So it can create new business opportunities like that. In the end, it comes down to changing. There was the horse bolted, like you said, but now it's not necessarily. It is quite urgent that a regulation comes in a way that actually makes sense for the tech firms to keep winning, and for the creatives that feed the systems to start winning and start understanding what new opportunities exist if you can create content and license it for inclusion in data sets that have to be legitimate, because tech firms will have to start in the EU to actually be transparent about what data they trained their AI system on. And if it's found to be infringing, there will be lawsuits and there will be repercussions and there will be remuneration paid to the original content owners. So I think in the same way that these discussions are very important to assess the risks of AI, we have to have conversations about the opportunities of AI. And because there's actually, in the same way as we can't imagine where we're going to be in 5 years, if we put our heads together now, we might actually come up with new ideas. What kind of jobs will be? Where can we move people into? Where can we upskill people into? It's not going to be an overnight solution, but I think the overnight solution, not overnight, but the short-term solution is to identify viable markets where you can create your own high-quality data sets, because that's what technology firms are after: high-quality data. And if you don't get that, so if you get over time, and we say that most humans get replaced and the machines take over and they actually just generate content and keep generating, there could be a plateau there. There could be a point where authenticity is lost. Yeah. Where human experience develops. I'm not so sure the computer experience will develop if there's not a development of the content that has a narrative that speaks to authentically to the current culture. And there's other issues too. If you think about it, a lot of the AI systems have been trained with data from the Western world and from up north. There's a lot of
biases.
So
there's not enough.
We can make machine
Biases
food?
and discrimination and all of those.
We can make machine food. That's basically what you're saying are job opportunities.
Well,
Okay.
it's one, but if you think about it, in Africa, I think there's huge opportunities for content creators to create.
I think that's true, by the way. I think that the one thing AI does is it levels the playing field from a computing power point of view, because we have access to use these systems that people everywhere in the world can use. So you're not having to be at a company or an institution with a huge supercomputer to do something that being here on this continent. And I think there's certainly in the short to medium term, I think there's a huge opportunity in Africa to be leaders and to use the technology. I mean, if we can keep the electricity on, but to use the technology, and it kind of levels the playing field with everywhere else in the world, which is a potentially exciting space.
And I think, okay.
No,
There's another one.
Jared, I loved your comment around weeding out mediocrity. Yeah. And the opportunity that tech allows us to step change the game. Yeah. I think what we will see, and you are right around things coming out, who's leading the game, early users of generative AI, particularly from an imagery, you can see it was all those guys sitting in the US, all much of the sameness, yeah. And I think the real opportunity for real creatives is that in this world of sameness and grayness, that's what the machine really is. It might look like it's being really creative, but only the human can be as creative around bringing new things. Particularly what you mentioned, Tara, the emotional part. You can teach it to be emotional, but there's things that humans can touch you with that the machine can't touch you with. And I think that's the space where, from an Africa perspective, we are talking about AI for the future, but the reality is, what do we have under our control now as the ecosystem? The challenge is, we have people sitting in our book that needs to be reskilled. What is that reskilling looking like? Yeah, and I have not seen any of that reskilling happening. Yeah, even if it's the free courses, if it's the thinking around it, there is something that's what's under our control. And I like what the challenge is, that how are we as an industry in South Africa coming together and say, what is under our control? How are we engaging big tech? How are we engaging legislative to clearly have a view of how we have agency? To say this AI is running on its own is like we're not passengers here. Yeah. And I think that is a beautiful space around. as South Africans, we have a history of when we come together, we can solve big problems. And we become a microcosm for the world of what is possible. And it's not a big thing to think about it. The brains are sitting, and Kagiso was not wrong to say the type of panel that we have today is a cross-section of the industry. Yeah, this is what South Africa does have. And you are right, Jared, is that everywhere else, everybody just, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah, we need to engage it as an industry and say, how do we work with it? And it starts today. Yeah, it's not like AI is tomorrow, it's already here. And there's models of, I love the piece that you did with your team, Taryn. That's a beautiful use of it, yeah? Still human created. There's a guy in Cape Town called Takiso. He's a photographer, but he's literally just how he's used AI starts with him as the creative, yeah? It's his creative work that he's now been able to really take it into a different space. He's become a social commentary just around the work that he does. So I do think there is something special that we can do, and leaning in, having this debate is a start of it. And we have a long list of actions for the Bangia. He went to the, I don't know if he went to go send a fax or email. There is something with us working together as an industry on this.
There's definitely work to be done.
Whilst we're thinking about this, we keep talking about creativity as the savior, and it's such a small part of our industry.
Yeah, exactly.
When you look at what we do, like, we have these centers in India, right? With 100,000 people doing what? Transcreation, translation, adaptation is gone, right? So now we're going, the industry itself, there's only a small part that's actually creating, doing that amazing thing. So we're going to save those people, but when we're thinking about the problem, we need to think about, a traffic manager who's not going to become a photographer. We need to think, what does that look like now? Because that's gone. And then can you reskill or can't you? So when we're framing the problem, let's think about beyond the creative output, because there's a few people who are really going to thrive in this and going to make tons of money. But there's going to be the bulk that's left behind that actually feed that system and run the system. And that's where most of our jobs are sitting at the moment. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the feel of our industry currently. I am conscious of time. Do we have another question, or we have another question right up there? Just press.
Oh yeah, thank you. So my name is Chapela. I just want to add on Chair's question. Question in terms of when you're speaking about AI, you spoke about, the current people, the current creatives, where they have to upskill themselves. And my question is, what about us who are not there in the industry yet and, are still from varsity and looking at AI, where the current employees need to be upskilled? Do I need to be fearful in terms of, is there still a future for me in the creative space?
Good question.
No more fearful than any other student at any other time in any other industry. I think, we all know that as soon as a textbook is printed, or published, it's out of date. So I think what's really important for you as a student is the same as us who are maybe in a later stage of our career, is you've got to stay on top of what's happening in the industry, what's the latest technology, etc. And remember what you're interested in, what is your passion, what is the change and the difference that you want to make in the world, and then how do you marry those two? And if you stay relevant and you keep building on your passion, then you will always find a way to innovate in your skills and find those gaps for your value. People have been doing it for time immemorial, and we will continue to do it.
Thank you.
I think you should feel
Fear
very
not.
glad that she answered that question.
That was very important. Wow,
That's exactly why we had Taryn. If there is no other question, I would like to give an opportunity to each of our panelists for your last dibs. We've got 10 minutes, so I'll give each of you 2 minutes. The conversation. I feel like the conversation.
Exactly.
The conversation's not done, right? But I do feel like we've put out a lot, with respect to what we need to think about as an industry, what we need to start implementing towards, and what each individual in this room and back at your shops, right, need to start engaging with, because it's happening. It's literally bolted out the shop, and we need to try and run faster than it. I don't know if we'll ever get to running faster than it, but it's happening. So. No, I want to end with Taryn. She's positive. I will start with Jared.
I feel victimized. Yeah, look, I think, let me end on this and say it's very refreshing to be able to have a 2-hour conversation about something in this world and not try to be informed by sound bites and 3-second, kind of interactions. So my closing is just to say thank you to the ACA and the Effies for putting this on. Thanks to everyone who joined us to share. It's wonderful to be able to engage on a topic like this in depth and with people that know a lot more than me.
Thank you, Jared. Really appreciate that. Man on your right, in the red shirt.
In the red shirt.
Yes, sir.
For me, it's almost a personal note I kind of want to end on. I've through the years deliberately tried to stay ahead of the game, So I would kind of, when I saw advertising maybe moving into the digital space, I ran in there. I moved into sponsorship. I tried every other area. I played all around on this constant journey, going into tech, going into data. And I want to get fluent in this AI stuff, almost for myself as a tool. And I always wanted to share that with the students as well, to say, get in there, play with it, use it, So that for me is something like I feel like I've been left a little bit behind, but I think it's just because it's moving so fast, So
everyone feels it.
And exactly. So you're sitting in this thing and I'm sitting and I'm playing with every single tool I can find. I am trying to test its limits, get to understand it, understand what can do what, So I think just as a personal upskilling, whilst this big global debate and fights going on, you just have to get proficient with the tools that are there if you want to survive individually in your career. So, I was joking and I was like, I want to make sure I'm going to be part of the last 5% if Altman's right. And to do that, you're going to have to be valuable in that new world, and then hopefully we can minimize the impact in the other areas. Okay.
Hayden, in your young age, you give very sage advice.
Thank you.
Thank you for thank you
for the
that.
young age comment.
Artwell?
Is this in the order of positiveness?
Not at all.
Because I feel like I should have been lost. No.
Not at all.
I'm a thing that I've think is a good takeaway for myself and Mr. Anwar there is working in the tech industry right now. I don't think this conversation is being had from a tech perspective with the likes of. The conversation that we're having is that shiny one, right? And for me, I do appreciate the honest conversation because we all know it. There are some headwinds that that are going to be faced. I just don't think the conversations are being had. And it's only when you have the conversations do you come up with solutions, or you attempt to come up with solutions. And when you come up with solutions, that's where we make a positive movement forward. So I do appreciate this, and hopefully I get invited again to have more of these conversations.
Bookmark. Thank you. Thank you for always, gracing us every time we call you to come share. Like literally pick your brains for everything that you know. So thank you for gracing us. I don't know if I should give you 2 minutes or 5. But I also just want to say to you that our industry has lots of lawyers in it. Many of them leave the law profession and come work with us. So I'm not surprised that you are so industry savvy, as industry savvy as you are. But Mr. Hollis, what would your closing comments be?
Thanks, Kagisa. Yes, thank you to my panelists as well for great discussion and for leading us in the discussion. It's given me a lot of new perspectives as well. Something that I've learned from my close involvement in the copyright reform matter, where on behalf of the Institute of IP Lawyers, I've participated in every public consultation participation that Parliament had on that legislation since 2017, and engaged with stakeholders from all the creative industries, is that there's a real disconnect. You know, industry is busy with its business, right? And while we need regulation to step in, to actually just rein in the impacts of AI, and to get to find that sweet spot where technology companies feel comfortable to operate in South Africa and invest in business here, but also for creative agencies to benefit equally, right? It's going to take some time. But here, Artwell mentioned, it's the first time, to his knowledge, that this conversation was had from a Google or a tech firm perspective with creative sitting around the same table. So this is where that spark needs to start happening, because the tech firms and the creative agencies will win when they work together and understand and develop business models that support each other. And in Africa, we are in a data economy, right? We all know that. Data is pretty much the currency at the moment. Mm-hmm. But Africa is still got so much untapped potential in the creative industries, where there's simply so much exponential growth that can happen. I wouldn't say the AI horse has bolted in Africa yet. It's certainly bolted in the US and the EU, and that's where everyone is now having urgent meetings and passing legislation left, right, and center. But the Africa horse might not have bolted yet, because the focus has very much been on, like I mentioned before, training AI systems on predominantly Western and Northern hemisphere content, culture, things like that. There's a lot that can happen, and we need to continue the conversation. Also, from a government perspective, what I learned in that process that I mentioned is that government can only legislate as well as it understands your industry. During the debates in Parliament, it was quite obvious that the Department of Trade and Industry had no idea how the advertising industry functions, what it needs to succeed, and any of the other industries for that matter, and still don't after almost 10 years. But they have a slightly better idea now because of the engagement. So the ACA's great work that it's done in that process needs to flow over into this area as well. And there has to be engagement, public-private partnerships, and technology companies need to engage with government to actually promote what kind of jobs, and also engage with agencies, so you understand, where is the next kind of specialist skills required from a human point of view to interact with these systems. So there's a lot to do.
Thank you.
Take us on.
Take us home in a beautiful and positive and light way.
I will do my best. I just want to say a massive thank you to the teams that have put today together, and especially putting together a panel of very diverse experience, very diverse views, because it's led to a very, very enriching, interesting conversation and some critical things. I wanted to talk about the importance of brand safety, and we got to a topic that I didn't think we would get to, and I'm so thrilled we spoke about it, is the threat and opportunity of AI, and the fact that it can be so overhyped, and we need to be realistic. And I think what's incredibly encouraging is that we've possibly started that, and there's the importance of different perspectives and different expertise around that conversation this evening. And to build on what Stem was saying around untapped potential in Africa, and this massive opportunity. We are the industries where this conversation around AI needs to be championed. We need to make sure we're incentivizing the right things around the adoption of this technology in our world. And what better place to be having these conversations and coming up with these solutions than a country that is more than used to coming up with solutions for seemingly impossible challenges. We are Africa, we are South Africa, we can find these solutions. Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm not even going to wrap this up. I think I would do a disservice to the conversation that was actually had tonight. Thank you to each and every single one of you. We will call on you again, because, like I said, I feel like we've started the conversation. We can't stop the conversation. I don't know why I'm looking at my chair of the Effie committee as he's going on. No ways, you're going to want us to do sort of round two. But I think it's important, and I think I'm mind blown, and I'm glad that we ran it this way, because we allowed the conversation to flow in its natural way, and which is why when everybody was asking me for questions, and I said, no, I think we've got enough people on the panel that are highly opinionated and highly knowledgeable about the subject, that I think will give us a really rich conversation. So thank you very much to each and every single one of you. I want to call the boss of the industry and my boss for oh no, he's got a paper, he's going to say something for his closing. I'm joking. I just like to harass him, guys.
Yes, he really does.
But I used to harass Hayden.
Thank you. I am actually going to officially do the thank yous now.
Oh, sorry, thanks.
Yeah, there you go. The official thank you, I must just say, first and foremost, is obviously, to the venue, to GIBS, being the seat of learning, being a place that brings people together that can then have discussions at a level of intellect that can extend what we want to do in our industry, and what we need to do in our industry, should I say. So firstly, we're in this place because it's the seat of learning. So thanks to GIBS for bringing us together for that. The second one is obviously the FE committee, to the chair and to the inaugural chair, who's forever going to be the inaugural chair.
Of course.
For the dialogue. But I think the important part is actually around the FE Awards for this year, and to remind people that we really are creating the dialogue so that we can talk effectiveness, and I think we got there. I won't get into too much detail about that. I want to thank the Secretariat. I will eventually thank my mother as well, and those people who made me, like AI. But more importantly, I'm going to ask the team, while we do, I want Snare to come up here, and I just want to say thanks so much, Snare, for putting this all together with the Secretariat. So thank you to everybody. That's the first thing. And now just to the panel. And Taryn. There we go. Right. A bit heavy. There we go.
Yeah, go around.
The back. There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Getting an Academy Award.
I think we need a group hug. We'll hand out everything just to speed things up. But most importantly, and the last thanks, is our amazing moderator. She put the whole thing together. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the dialogue is officially closed.